It's peach time again. Time to make some peach wine. I'm going to start out with 40 peaches here. It's about 15 pounds. And my other ingredients include 10 pounds of sugar, which I'm going to dissolve in about 2.5 gallons of water. I'll probably need more water at the end to reach 5 gallons. My goal is to make 5 gallons of wine. And I'm going to need about 2 teaspoons of wine tannin. You probably want to dissolve that in a little warm water before you add it to the wine. And some yeast nutrient or yeast energizer, either one. I'm going to use 5 teaspoons of yeast nutrient. And 1 tablespoon of acid blend. That makes it about the tartness I like. And I also have some pectic powder. I'll probably use a full tablespoon of that. It says a half teaspoon per gallon, which is 2.5 teaspoons, a little less than a tablespoon. But peach wines can really have a lot of pectin and haze in them, so I'm going to just bump it up to an even tablespoon. You need some good yeast. This is Lalvin EC1118. It's champagne type yeast. It ferments just about everything. I use it for most of my wine and meads. And some Campden tablets or other sulfites. You'll take 5 of these crushed up initially, and then later on down the road when we get ready to bottle this, you'll add another 5. And that's my ingredients for now. I've got to get my peaches all cut up and de-pitted, and then they're going in the fermenting bucket, which I have lined with a nylon mesh bag. So I guess I better get busy on these ripe South Carolina peaches. Here's what 40 peaches look like after they've been quartered and pitted. The next part is fun. I get to stick my hands down there and smash them up the best I can. I've got my sugar over here dissolved in some water. I heated it up to pasteurization temperatures and I'm letting it cool down. So I better get to smashing on my peaches, and I'll get this dumped in there along with my tannin, yeast nutrient, acid blend, pectic powder, and sulfites. And then tomorrow, at least 24 hours after adding the sulfites, then it will be time to put the yeast in. Here's the smashed peaches. They smell really good. I'm going to add my sugar water, enough water to make up to about 5.5 gallons or so. So that when I rack this off, I'll have enough to fill a 5-gallon carboy. I've got my 5.5 gallons of volume now. Fruit bag's all tied up. I've stirred it and I've checked the gravity. I get about 1.096, but since it's very warm yet, it's probably actually more like 1.100. You have to adjust for temperature. So I'll loosely cover this, and tomorrow I'll put the yeast in. I'm going to leave it loosely covered for the night. You can throw a towel over the top of it. Well, I just use the lid and lay a piece of paper towel over the airlock hole. The main thing is you want the sulfite gas to dissipate before you put the yeast in tomorrow. And there's the yeast, just waiting for its chance. This is what last year's peach wine looked like. A little thirsty after all that peach mashing. It's really good after aging a year. It's not very impressive after a month or two, but it really builds up some character over time. Good stuff. Hope to have 5 gallons like that a year from now. It's been over 24 hours now since the sulfites were added. I've got a 1/4 cup of warm water and my yeast. I'm going to pour the yeast in that, let it sit, rehydrate for 15 minutes, stir it up, and then pour it into the must. Yeasts are different, so follow the directions on your particular yeast. And while that's rehydrating, I'm going to get my hydrometer and I'm going to stir up what's in the bucket really well. Try to get a good accurate hydrometer reading so I'll know what my potential alcohol is. Now that the bucket's been sitting for over a day and it's back to room temperature, I get a gravity reading of about 1.100, which is just a little bit over 13% potential alcohol. My yeast are hydrated now. It's been about 15 minutes. So I need to take a spoon, a clean spoon, stir them up, keep suspended in the liquid. Pour them into my must, and probably stir them too, get it worked in there good. Then I'll put the lid on, put my airlock on, and hopefully by tomorrow I should have some fermentation. It's been about 16 hours now since the yeast was added. There's about one bubble every 3 to 4 seconds, roughly. This is a 6.5 gallon container. I have about 1.5 inches of head space at the top. And make sure your container is large enough to allow for some foam. If not, it'll all come out the airlock. This is looking good so far. I'm going to find a nice out of the way spot to sit it, and in a week, 2 weeks, however long it takes, whenever the bubbles stop, it'll be time to rack it out into another container. It's been 2 weeks now since fermentation started. The bubbles in the airlock stopped, and according to my sample here, it's fermented down to complete dryness. I get 0.990 on my hydrometer. If I take the initial gravity of 1.1 and subtract the 0.99 that I have right now, I get a difference of 0.11. Multiply that times 129 and it gives you the approximate alcohol, which is 14.19, which I would probably round down to about 14 on my label. I sanitized all my equipment. My carboy I'm getting ready to transfer the liquid into. I used a sulfite solution to sanitize the tubing and carboy. I have 1 crushed Campden tablet that I'm going to add before I rack into the carboy. I do this just to maintain some level of sulfites. So I'll get this liquid transferring in here. You see the fruit bag is floated all the way to the top. It doesn't hurt to shove that bag down into your must a few times while it's fermenting. So I'll get this racked. I have the wine running into the carboy. I'll let that fill. Then when it's done, I'll stick my stopper and airlock on it, put a little water in the airlock. And then it's going to have to sit somewhere for 1 month. After 1 month, it'll be racked again. And maybe even a time after that. It takes a long time for all the solids in peach wine to settle. If you bottle it too soon, you'll end up with sediment in your bottles. So I'll get this wrapped up and then we'll check back on it in a month. Well, it's been over a month now since the first racking from the primary fermenter into this bottle. Got quite a bit of sediment here at the bottom, if you can see it. And it's quite hazy yet. It's starting to clear out a little bit at the top, but that's a long way to go. Peach wine takes a very long time to settle. So I've got another bottle here. My stainless steel racking cane and some tubing. I'm going to siphon from the first bottle into this one. I'm going to add 1 crushed Campden tablet into this fermenter before I rack it, just to keep some level of sulfites in there. I've sanitized this bottle, racking cane and tubing, with a sulfite solution. I usually use some potassium metabisulfite powder, about 1/4 teaspoon in a gallon of water. Circulate that around inside the fermenter and get it in my tubing and in my racking cane. Get them well sulfited. So now I'm going to fill my racking cane and tubing with some water and start a siphon and get this transferred. Well, I have my tubing, my racking cane here full of water, and this is how I usually start a siphon. You gotta shove it in the bottle and get it in the other bottle at the same time. And there we go. Let that transfer into there. I'm going to try to minimize the amount of splashing. Well, more than halfway siphoned now. See this bottle filling up. I use a non-skid rubber pad here. It lets me tilt the bottle without sliding. As it gets close to the bottom, I'll tilt it over, try to get all of it out without pulling out this layer of sediment. I'm going to leave that behind. There's the sediment that was left. Bits of peach and yeast. Got this bottle filled up, airlock on it. So now this is going to have to sit for another month, and then I'll have to look at it. If it's clear enough, it might be bottled in. With peach wine, I never know, so we'll look at it in a month. If it's not clear enough, I'll have to rack it one more time. It smells really good, so I'm hoping for a good batch eventually. It's October now and I'm racking the peach wine for a 3rd time. It's still hazy, so I'm going to rack it, let it sit 1 more month, and with any luck I'll be able to bottle it here in November. Most fruit wines are clear after 2 rackings, but peach takes longer. So I'm just doing the same thing I did last time. Sanitized with sulfites, crushed 1 sulfite tablet and added it to this container. And we'll fill it up and let it sit for another month. It's November now. Time to bottle this peach wine. I got the bottles out. I have my corks floating in some sulfite solution. I rinse all my bottles in sulfite solution before I fill them, and I rinse all my equipment. Besides the bottling bucket, this is the equipment I'll be using today. A stirrer, a corker, racking cane, a bottle filler, and tubing. I'm going to be sweetening this batch of wine with 4 cups of sugar and 2 cups of water. I just know from experience that's about right for me. Peach wine's really thin bodied, very dry usually when it finishes. So it's better if it's sweetened quite a bit. You can use more or less sugar, but you always want to have 2 parts sugar to 1 part water. The 4 cups of sugar is completely dissolved now, so I'm ready to add that to my wine. I have my bottles ready. Bucket, racking cane, tubing's ready. I need to crush 5 Campden tablets. Add that to the bottling bucket. And I need to add 2.5 teaspoons of potassium sorbate along with my dissolved sugar. If you're making a completely dry wine, not adding any sugar, you can skip the sorbate. But if you're adding any sugar, you need to do the sorbates. You should probably use the sulfite tablets regardless. And the sorbates and the sulfites will prevent the sugar that's added from being fermented, give me exploding wine bottles. So got the airlock out and I'm ready to start siphoning. Siphoning is in process. I've already added the sorbate and the sulfites. I'm going to pour in the sugar, try to get it to mix. And I'll stir that all up and get ready to bottle. Here's the finished sweetened wine all ready to be bottled. It's in the bucket. I have a spigot going down through my tubing. I have this nice little bottling wand, bottle filler. It works from gravity. When it's full of liquid, it stays shut. You push down that thing on the end, it fills it up. Just have to be careful and watch. So I'm going to get these bottles filled. You want to fill them up about as full as you can get them. So when you pull the filler out, you have just enough head space to stay just below the cork. That's about all there is to that. The bottles are all filled. It's the equivalent of 26/5. Plus, I got a glass to sample, and I might add it tastes pretty good. It's not quite as clear as I thought it was. It's got a really slight haze to it, but it looks good. It's good enough to bottle. It'll eventually be water clear in that bottle. It might leave a real fine sediment at the bottom, but that's no problem. Just pour it off. I'm quite happy with the way it's turned out. Now I just have to insert corks in all these. I print labels on removable stickers, so whenever the bottles are empty I can reuse them. This wine is drinkable at this point, but if you can stand to wait a full year, it'll be really good. One full year of aging, and you'll have some delicious peach wine. Well, I guess I'm going to end it right here. Thanks for watching.